Queen Jadwiga would go on to die in 1399, but 11 years later, in 1410, we have the Battle of Grunwald, in which this united Polish-Lithuanian army was able to absolutely smash to pieces the army of the Teutonic Knights in what was one of medieval Europe's greatest battles, looking just number-wise and how many warriors were involved on both sides. So for Poland and Lithuania, it would go on to be a decisive win, which would shape its relations with the Teutonic Knights for decades to come. But if we go back a little bit, in the late 1380s, in the 1390s, there was also the idea that after Mary had died in Hungary, that this new Jagiellonian dynasty with Jadwiga and Jogaila or Władysław would also take power in Hungary to yet again unite the crown of Poland and Hungary, because we had such moments earlier, such as during the reign of Louis the Great. Later also there were moments when the crown of Bohemia, so today's Czechia, or even slightly larger than Czechia, was part of this crown. So there was this Jagiellonian idea of a completely Jagiellonian dynasty that would stretch from the Adriatic Sea in Croatia up to the Baltic Sea in parts of Poland and Lithuania, which at sometimes, not always, but sometimes managed to reach the Baltic Sea, and at sometimes also managed to reach the Black Sea. So this idea that later on was popularized in the 20th century by the father of modern Poland, the so-called Intermarium, or today we have the so-called Three Seas Initiative, which was created in 2015 and unites a number of countries in this region. There was this idea of a larger organization or form of cooperation that would stretch between these three seas in Central Eastern Europe. So this was something that Jadwiga and the Polish nobles were also thinking a lot about. But in the end, they never got to the Hungarian crown. They had to focus on ruling in Poland. Jadwiga had her own problems in Hungary. Some rebellious nobles in Hungary and Croatia had murdered her mother. She was not really able to do anything about it at the moment. But what she did was that she convinced her husband to take the troops and enter the province of Volhynia, which is today part of Ukraine, but at that time was under the Hungarian crown. So she enlarged the kingdom of Poland slightly at the cost of the Hungarians, and in that way got a form of a revenge. Also, during Casimir the Great, previously Poland had already taken parts of what is today Ukraine, parts of Galicia, the city of Lviv. Previously, there were some raids as well in the late 10th century and early 11th. For example, King Bolesław the Brave did a raid in 1018 that went all the way to Kiev. So there was some Polish interest in the region, but with Queen Jadwiga, it was more entrenched, you could say, the position in that part of what then became Poland and today is part of Ukraine. So Jadwiga was definitely not a queen that was without any influence. She could direct her husband quite efficiently, and apart from that, she became known as a patron of the arts as well, but maybe even more than the arts, of education and of various types of religious Catholic charities. So she became absolutely beloved by the Polish nation. There were many cases where she intervened. For example, some unruly knights had some fun. They had engaged in some form of game during which their horses had wreaked havoc over the field of some peasant. The peasant was devastated. His harvest was gone. The crops were gone. His family was about to starve during the winter. and he reached out to the queen, who quickly reprimanded the knights and made sure that he was paid some form of restitution for the destroyed property. And in general, these various centers, religious centers, which would help the general population with everything from medicine to agriculture, all types of things, they were really created thanks to Jadwiga. Also, her focus on education made sure that at the time it became known as the Krakow Academy and later on the University of Krakow. But with time, it became the Jagiellonian University, really thinking about the contribution that she had done to education in the city. So this was a legacy that she...
And she was canonized. She died, as you said, in 1399, following complications following childbirth,
yes.
which of course was quite a
common
affliction for women at that time. And then she was canonized, I think, in 1997?
Yes, this was naturally a work of our great, as they call him in Poland, the Polish Pope, Pope John Paul II. There were attempts to do it even earlier. There was one attempt in medieval times, and there was another attempt at the mid-20th century. So it wasn't the first attempt, but it was Pope John Paul that was successful in that regard. So Queen Jadwiga, until today, has her historical role as this ruler who brought Poland onto the path of forming. Later on, they would form a union with Lithuania. I mean, they formed a personal union with the marriage between her and Jogaila, but a political union came a few centuries later. So that is something she's remembered for, naturally, for the fact that she was the first woman to rule. But also this part of her, that this charity, this close relation with the people. So the fact that she became later on a saint of Poland means that also in religious tradition she is still both well remembered and very cherished.
Good. Well, that's a lovely moment on which to end. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much,
Adam. That's been a fascinating story. There we are, a fascinating story about the woman who was the first king of Poland, which, of course, you see, 600 years ago, nearly 700 years ago, you see, even before the modern idea of gender fluidity, Poland was yet again leading the way. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History.